difficulties with the Facebook live feed this morning. Anna Alexandria? Anna? Okay. Anna Besson? Brett Burns? Yolanda Carson Coleman? Hope Cram?
Here.
Gabrielle? Taylor Freeman? Carly Glenn? Is Carly? Okay. Spencer? Kendrick Gordon? Braxton Half?
Here.
Clarissa Hamilton? Molly Henson? Kaylin Hopkins? QJ? Thayan? Joel? Hadriel? Mallory Mills? Kia Perry? Devin Pollard? Nikki, Heather Smith? Carla Smith? Nick Souter? Nick? Hunter Spence? Madison Stokes? Nathan Taylor? Tiara Walker? Emily White, sorry. Chandler White? Caroline Whitmire? Kevin Wicker? Ann Yips? Ann? Okay, I have an announcement that may or may not make you all happy. So, we're a tad bit behind in here as far as covering anxiety disorders. So, and I was looking at the course schedules. We have a test scheduled here for Wednesday. There's also a test scheduled for child development on Wednesday. We're right on schedule in child development. We're a tad bit behind here. So I am going to move the test to Friday. This Friday. This Friday. And y'all have a neuro test on Wednesday, right? You're not in neuro? Any of my neuro folks? Y'all have a neuro test? So that's what we'll do a test Friday. You have it on both. Is that not a good thing? So we'll move the test to Friday. All right, now let's go over some things in the book that will not be on the test. Or, I'm sorry, golly, I cannot talk today. It's a bad day. Let's go over the things in the book that won't be on the test. No, the things in the book that will be on the test, or more likely will be on the test.
Ralph,
Yeah,
what chapters are?
it's going to be chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's going to be all the background stuff and anxiety disorders. The child disorders will not be on this test. All right, so, from chapter 1, the section on page 13 where it says discussing diversity, biological explanation for psychopathology in women, a brief history of hysteria. Be sure you read that section. And then also the sections on page 14, the development of biological treatments and consequences of the biological tradition. Which part? All of it? Okay. On page 13, discussing diversity, a biological explanation for psychopathology in women, a brief history of hysteria. Read that section, and also know the sections on page 14, the development of biological treatments and the consequences of the biological tradition. The psychological tradition, beginning on page 15, be sure you read the part about moral therapy. The psychological tradition, page 15. Moral therapy, page 15. And then humanistic theory, page 22.
Humanistic.
Yeah, humanistic theory, page 22. Chapter 2, an integrative approach to psychopathology. Read the section on page 34, multidimensional models.
What page?
Page 34,
Read all of that?
that whole section, yeah. It goes on over to 35.
So is it just the ones in this, highlighted purple?
Yeah, the multidimensional models. 34 all the way into 35. And then on page 52, psychosocial influences on brain structure and function.
What page was that?
52, and then read 52 all the way through page 54.
Read what?
All the way through 54.
Oh, okay.
And then that whole section on behavioral and cognitive science, 55 through 57.
Did we cover this in the lectures? That we read?
Not a whole lot. That's why I'm telling you to read this in the book there. And then 58, page 58 under emotions.
All of that?
The physiology and purpose of fear, that section. And then the cultural, social, and interpersonal factors, page 62, gender. And then also on page 62, the social effects and health and behavior. Chapter 3, clinical assessment, diagnosis, and research in psychopathology. Page 70, page 71, key concepts in assessment. On page 84, diagnosing psychological disorders. So the section on page 85, classification issues.
So just classification issues?
Yeah, read that about classification issues. It goes all the way to page 87. And then read the section on the DSM-5, page 88. All the way through beyond DSM-5, dimensions and spectra.
What was the page of that last one?
Page 88, the DSM-5, and then all the way through the beyond DSM-5 dimensions and spectra, that begins on page 90. And it goes all the way through 92, or 292. All right, chapter 4. Okay, for each of the disorders listed, generalized anxiety, panic, specific phobias, social anxiety, OCD, trauma, or PTSD. You see a section under each diagnosis, or each disorder called statistics. That tells us how prevalent these disorders are. Be sure you know the prevalence rates for all these disorders. So the statistics section under each disorder.
We don't see that.
What page?
Okay, I can just go to the specific ones. Social anxiety, okay, generalized anxiety, page 125.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for panic disorder, it's on page 130. For phobias, it's on page 137. For social anxiety disorder, it's on page 142. For PTSD, it's on page 148. For OCD, it's on page 155. And we're going to cover body dysmorphic disorder after the test. That's a good bridge between it and somatic disorders, yeah.
Can you list off the disorders again?
It's just, is it
Yeah,
like
generalized
all of them?
anxiety,
Okay.
Is it like all of them in that chapter?
panic, specific phobia, social anxiety, PTSD, OCD, basically all of them that are listed in that chapter except body dysmorphic disorder.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so those are the things in the book to concentrate on that aren't in lecture. So again, the test will be on Friday, After we finish up the anxiety disorder section on Wednesday, we will do a little bit of a review. Right now, it's probably gonna be 20 to 30 multiple choice questions, and then a couple of short answer. And for this first test, I'll go ahead and give you the short answer. I'll give you those on Wednesday. All right, so we did a lot of talking about panic disorder. Now let's look at agoraphobia. All right, so agoraphobia literally means, if we take it from the Greek word, fear of the marketplace. It's an anxiety about being in places or situations from which escape would be difficult, embarrassing, or impossible. And the embarrassing or impossible perception is just that. It's in the perception of the individual. They may consider going to Walmart and having to leave because they're having a panic attack as embarrassing or impossible to escape. Whereas we would say, I don't see how that's embarrassing. The fear can cause people to be reluctant to leave home where they are safe from such possibilities, or be afraid of being home alone when help might be needed. Now, agoraphobia tends to go hand in hand with panic attacks. However, at the DSM-5, when it was created, we now have a standalone diagnosis of agoraphobia. So you can diagnose panic disorder with agoraphobia or without agoraphobia, and you can also diagnose agoraphobia without panic disorder. However, most of the time they are going to occur together. So let's see how this works. Let's say I'm at Walmart Sunday afternoon. I don't know about where you all shop, but I try to avoid Walmart on Sundays because that's the worst day. Everybody comes in after church, or people are out there doing their shopping for the week ahead, and it's just crowded. So I'm there on Sunday afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock, and I start to have a panic attack. My chest starts beating. I start sweating. I'm having trouble breathing. I feel like I'm having a heart attack. I go to the emergency room. The ER doctor says you didn't have a heart attack, you just had a panic attack. So those are terrible. Remember how we talked on Friday, how people feel like they're dying when that happens? Particularly the first few times. I want to do everything in my power to not have that happen again. Remember I said, one of the hallmarks of panic disorder is worrying about a future panic attack happening. So I get to thinking, okay, I was at Walmart, it was really crowded, that's what did it. I'm going to start going shop at Walmart at midnight or 1 in the morning. So I do. That may go good for a couple of months. Then I have a panic attack at Walmart, 1 a.m. Okay, I guess Walmart's just too big of a store for me. I'm going to go do my shopping shopping at Dollar General. So I go to Dollar General, I go in the evening, 8 or 9 o'clock, right before they close, it goes great. Maybe it goes great for a month, 3 months, and then I have one. Okay, I guess I just can't go shopping anymore. So I just start staying at home, have people go do my shopping. I've worked with folks that the only time they leave their house is to go to the doctor. They order all their food from Amazon or all their stuff, they have people bring them groceries. In this modern age, as we learned during the pandemic, you can almost live your life without having to leave your house, can't you? It becomes difficult though, and it's not healthy, particularly if you start to fear going outside. All right, so you don't have to copy down the part about the DSM-5, but these 2 bullet points here. The 12-month prevalence rate for agoraphobia is approximately 1.7% for adolescents and adults, and 0.4% for those older than 65. So this doesn't tend to affect the elderly. Most of the treatment options are some of the same options we use for panic disorder because they are so linked. So finding irrational thoughts, teaching relaxation skills. There's some neat research going on with agoraphobia and virtual reality. So you put the person in a virtual reality setup and then expose them to going shopping or to different scenarios. And there's some evidence that this is just as effective as using cognitive behavioral therapy. Now that type of treatment, it's flashy and seems really cool. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Now this type of treatment is going to be, it sounds really cool, but I think there's going to be trouble actually implementing it in clinics. Not a lot of clinics, particularly in rural areas, are going to have the technology necessary. And it sounds expensive, so most clinics will probably continue to use cognitive behavior. Can I move on now? All right, now we're going to look at phobias. These are intense, persistent fears triggered by specific objects or situations. We all have fears. And most people do not end up coming in to counseling specifically for their phobia. I have a fear of heights. Most phobias you can link back to some sort of stimulus and trigger. And phobias are often related in origin to classical conditioning. So if you think back to classical conditioning, that's J.B. Watson, Ivan Pavlov, where a neutral stimulus suddenly acquires conditioning properties of a stimulus in nature. Like, remember Pavlov was doing the study with the dogs, and he would ring a bell, give the dogs meat powder, and the dogs would salivate. After a few trials, he would just ring the bell, and the dogs would start to salivate. They're ringing a bell, pun intended. Sound familiar? Okay. Most phobias have their origin in some sort of classical conditioning. I shared I don't like heights. Anybody have a fear you'd like to share? It could be heights, spiders,
Snakes.
snakes, okay?
Roller coasters.
Roller coasters, okay?
Amputation.
Amputation. I think I shared, we had someone come in the clinic 2 or 3 weeks ago with an amputation fear. Yeah, yeah, okay? And you have all of your limbs. Any others? Anybody fear of water, fear of drowning?
I'm kind of a fear of large masses of ice. Like when I'm in the ocean, it kind of freaks me out that I know what's below me.
Okay. Okay. The next thing, Sean, is working with you. All right, all right. Well, you can probably think hard enough about your phobia. You can probably find 1 or 2 events that kind of triggered it. I don't like heights. I hate flying. Don't get up on the roof very often unless I have to. I can climb ladders, change light bulbs, that sort of thing. And I can ride in elevators, and I can, climb steps. I can sit high up at a concert or a sporting event. Can't be on the upper deck. Can't be on the back row or anything, but I can do those things. But getting up on my roof at the house or flying is kind of a no-go for me. My triggering event happened when I was 4 or 5 years old. There was a playground in Paragould. Paragold's a railroad town, so they used to have this big locomotive you could climb on. Anybody from Paragould in here? Okay. Harmon's Playfield. It was probably gone before you were born. Do you remember the old locomotive at Harmon's Playfield? Okay. Yeah. It was long gone before you came around. So they had this old steam locomotive that you could climb on right at the front of the park. We were climbing on it. I was with my mom and some cousins. We were climbing down, and someone's foot hit a yellow jacket nest. So then they start swarming. I guess it was under the steps of the ladder. So in the chaos, I either jumped or fell or was thrown from one of the top steps of the locomotive down to the ground. Now the locomotive, it was probably about 10 or 12 foot high. It wasn't super high, but for a little 4-year-old, that was pretty high. And apparently I got stung a lot, but the vivid memory I have is seeing the ground coming closer and closer and hitting the ground. That's my vivid memory. And it's interesting that in that event, my mind turned it into not liking heights instead of being afraid of yellow jackets. Because several years ago, I asked Mom about the incident. I said, yeah, I think I got stung 3 or 4 times. And she goes, no, you got stung 10 times. We took you to the doctor to get checked out. I didn't remember getting stung that many times. So we can develop a fear of just about anything. I want to go to this link. Alright, so here's an A to Z list of strange phobias. I'll just send that to you so y'all can look at it later. I'll just AirDrop. If you don't want this site, just decline. Alright, so let's see, we'll just go through some of these here. Acluophobia, fear of darkness. Now, something to keep in mind, all these phobias are gonna have odd sounding names. When you go to the psychologist or counselor that they diagnose you with a specific phobia, they're not gonna put arachnophobia, fear of spiders. They're gonna put specific phobia on your diagnosis, and then one of the subtypes we're going to look at here in a few moments. Aphenophobia, fear of being touched. Atelophobia, fear of perfection. Some of you may have bibliophobia, fear of books. Cacophobia, fear of ugliness. Coulrophobia, fear of clowns. Anybody afraid of clowns in here? That's kind of a common one, so you don't like clowns? Don't do circuses? Would never watch the movie It? You can watch movies about clowns? Well, you can't do haunted house. Okay, what about, there was a clown, Puddles? Was it Puddles the clown on America's Got Talent several years ago? He was a singer. Do y'all remember a few Halloweens ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, there was this big thing about people driving around in clown suits? Just freaking people out. I think a lot of that was kind of an urban legend, but it really caught on about this time of year. Let's see. Now here's an interesting one: dendrophobia, fear of trees. Allurophobia, fear of cats. Glossophobia, fear of speaking in public. Your snakes would be herpetophobia, fear of reptiles. And here's another one for fear of snakes: ophidiophobia, fear of snakes. Philometophobia, fear of kissing. You can have a fear of everything. Trypophobia, fear of holes. You have that one? Like a hole just swallowing you up, or?
No, it has to be like a whole bunch of holes in one area.
Oh, like those plants. Yeah, no, that's a common thing. Wiccophobia, fear of witches. Zoophobia, fear of animals.
Fear of what?
Animals, zoophobia, fear of animals in general. Alright, so the specific subtypes of phobias are the animal type, natural environment type, holes would probably go in that one, trees, blood injection type, situational type, or other. We don't see these disorders very often. We don't see people coming in just for specific phobias. Your snake fear. What's your major?
Psychology.
Okay. We don't handle snakes in the psychology department, so you're good.
Yeah.
You can pretty much live your life and not have to go in and get treatment for snake phobia. Now, last year, spring during finals, we did have a snake in the psych hall.
Oh, no.
But one of the work studies captured it, and we turned it over to the great folks in the biology department. So, that's the only snake incident we've had.
We're good.
We try to be snake free. Yes.
In high school, there was an elementary music class, and about once a week for a solid month, the snake would fall through the ceiling onto
That's horrible.
That's horrible. Oh, that would create a lot of snake phobias, I
Yeah.
think. Oh, terrible. So, the point I'm trying to make is that we can live our lives without having to get treatment for our phobias most of the time. I've treated 2 people for specific phobias. One, and that is all they came in for, and I'm not making this up, was a mail carrier, a postal worker, who was afraid of dogs. Okay, that's cliche, but I swear it happened. Then I had a guy, it was a young man in his early 20s. He was on the autistic spectrum. And we were treating for anxiety, and he had a big problem. He was afraid of Halloween decorations. Now, that's not a big deal, except when you realize they start putting out Halloween decorations in the store like mid-August, right? So this guy, he couldn't even go to that half of Walmart knowing that the Halloween decorations were out. And if he did, he would get so upset he would throw up. So it was terrible for him, terrible for his family. We explored it, and he was mainly afraid of like the scary looking mask, the skeletons, even the cartoony looking skeletons, and the anything with blood or gore on it. So I did this type of treatment known as systematic desensitization with him. I taught him relaxation techniques like what we practiced in class on Friday. And then I printed off some pictures. First was just some hay bales, fall type decorations. He looked at those, rated his anxiety, and then relaxed. And those didn't cause much anxiety. Then I printed off like a picture of Casper the Ghost. And we didn't do all this in one session. This was over a period of about 6 weeks. He rated his anxiety about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. So we practiced the relaxation technique, and then he could look at Casper for about, and his anxiety would only get up to a 1 or 2. Then I printed off like a skeleton type costume picture. He about busted the office door down trying to get out. Get him back in. He relaxes. We had to work on the skeleton for a couple of sessions. And then he got to where he could look at that. So we just kind of went on. His final exam to pass that part of treatment was to walk down the Halloween decoration aisle at Walmart. Now, his parents were with him. And they said it was a speed walk, but he did it, and he didn't throw up, and that was a big deal.
How old was he?
He was in his early 20s. He was on the autistic spectrum. All right, so let's look at causal factors. Specific phobias are more common in families in which other members also have phobias. Identical twins have higher concordance rates than fraternal twins. So that leads us to believe that there's could be a genetic link to specific phobias. However, the prominent theory is classical conditioning, as I described earlier. All right, so when we come back on Wednesday, we're gonna finish up anxiety disorders. We're gonna talk about generalized anxiety disorders, OCD, and PTSD. And we'll review for the test. Do we have anybody that's gonna be out on Friday, traveling for a game? Okay, come cross country?
I'm not traveling for a game. so
Okay.
I have an appointment with Mayo and then
Okay,
do you want me to just make sure, like,
be sure for the test Friday, bring your iPad, it's gonna be on weekend.
yeah, I can take a look. I just have to go home. My parents work, will. And it says.
That's like that one thing on the internet, that looked up on
Yeah.
the day or two.
It's gonna be time.
That's,
They've been doing that for like
Yeah, 2 years.
Yes.
Upload it to Dropbox, then there's a unit that says first nervous over upload it to Dropbox under that.
Oh, okay. And who is traveling on Friday? We'll get the text message.
Well, y'all, who all's gonna be out Friday? Just the two of y'all? Three? Okay, three of y'all? When are y'all leaving Friday?
We don't know yet. But probably more.
Okay, if you're leaving during class time, yeah, y'all can take it Monday when you get back. But if you're not leaving during class time, you can take it here. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
When y'all find out. Yeah.
Are you gonna, do I need to send you like a picture of anything so I'm not kind of absent on Friday or?
You'll be counted absent, but it'll be